Hello everyone and welcome to Pedro's Movie Cavern. As usual, my name is Pedro, aka Pete, and this is my cavern, my movie cavern, where I collect movies, I watch movies, I write about movies, I talk about movies, and I generally live a life that is surrounded by movies day in, day out. I did post on the community page on my channel, on my YouTube channel, that I was planning on doing a Q&A video, so I've decided today is the day I'm going to do the Q&A video. This morning I was at a radio station that I volunteer at, learning the ropes of queuing up songs and adding jingles and basically presenting radio stuff, because I do a lot of microphone and video recording stuff. So I've decided, because I've got that kind of motivation in me at the moment to do this, I've decided that today is going to be the day that I'm going to do the Q&A. I asked for questions that weren't what you would generally find in Q&As, such as what's your favorite film, or this, that, and the other. I wanted industry questions, community questions, things that I could go into a bit more detail about instead of just talking about my favorite films, because I've done that so often. I do it in a lot of videos anyway. So I'm, as you can see, the background is a bit different. I've got my basically my title screen from my videos is my background, because I've got a new webcam that is above my my monitor. My laptop is to the side, so I'll be looking over to the side to read the questions, and I'll be looking forward to the camera to answer them, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I've decided today is the day I'm going to do the Q&A. There's some really good questions as well from quite a few people, quite a few things to go in depth into. So without further ado, question number one comes from @Palfy18, who asked two questions. The first question is, what movie tropes should directors avoid? Sometimes tropes are what make the film entertaining. If the film is a slasher movie or something like that, then having specific tropes does kind of make the film more entertaining, because a slasher film, you can't take a slasher movie like serious at all. So having those tropes that you see carry from different films like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th to something like My Bloody Valentine, these slasher movie tropes kind of work. But there are some that you see in other movies that are a little bit like, oh, come on, you could have done better than that. It's not necessarily, I wouldn't say it's a director issue. It's more of a screenplay issue, because a lot of these directors that make a lot of films, because you don't find many writer directors anymore. You get a couple, and you get directors who are allowed to do whatever they want. So people like Scorsese and Spielberg and Denis Villeneuve and Quentin Tarantino are allowed to do essentially what they want, because they are the bankable filmmakers, the directors. But when you look at writers, a lot of films that come out these days tend to have between 1 and 4 writers on a script, and if 4 writers can't come up with a script that is original, then why is there 4 writers? This is the problem I see at the moment, is that you get a lot of these big Hollywood movies that have upwards of 4 writers writing a 95-minute screenplay. I mean, I can understand that some writers are brought on to do script polishes and additional rewrites and stuff. But when you've got a film, say something like the movie Ronin, which was originally written by a writer called J.D. Zeik, which was then rewritten by David Mamet. David Mamet rewrote it under a different name, because he wanted full screenplay credit, but obviously the Writers Guild wouldn't allow that because it's a rewrite of someone else's script. But J.D. Zeik got story credit, and David Mamet, under a pseudonym, got a screenplay credit. So you have to look at the writers, not at the actual directors. Yes, some film directors will use tropes in their movies continually, because that's kind of a movie making like way. But tropes are, like I said, a lot of tropes make a film what it is. Like you go into something like Scream, and you like the first time you watch Scream, say you watch the first Scream from 1996. Wes Craven hadn't really made a slasher film since Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was I think 1994, and that was a sort of meta fourth wall break of a movie, which is it's a very clever movie as well. That one, which kind of avoids the tropes of the previous Nightmare on Elm Street movies. But you watch something like Scream. Scream takes the idea of movie tropes and subverts them to a degree where it becomes like an entirely different type of genre. So with Scream, you then have Scream 2, Scream 3, and to the point where you get to like Scream 7, which I think is coming. So the one thing I would like to see avoided by filmmakers, especially when it comes to films, especially in the horror genre, I'd say get rid of the final girl. The final girl has been done to death. We know that these people are going to survive, which is like from the outset, you know that these people are going to survive because they are the main characters of said film. So final girls and legacy characters. I suppose legacy characters aren't really a trope, but the idea of having legacy characters in a film franchise 7 films in who only have about 5 minutes of screen time, yeah, I think it's overdone now. Like Gale Weathers didn't need to be in the last Scream movie. She was like a pointless character. She didn't really add anything to the film. But yeah, tropes, like I said, tropes sometimes make a movie more enjoyable than you actually realize. He also asked, his second question was, which movies make me feel there is a master of their craft behind the camera, and why? Filmmaking masters. Modern filmmakers, I would say Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg are masters of blocking and filmmaking in a technical way. I don't think that Christopher Nolan is the strongest writer. He has like ridiculously good ideas, but his way of putting them across in written form, in script form, kind of, I don't think he's the strongest visually as a director, as a person pointing the camera and telling actors where to go and setups and shooting certain things. I think Nolan is a master. He's way up there. The fact that he shoots on film, even though it is IMAX film, but the fact that he shoots on film and he shoots practically is amazing. And Spielberg, I don't think, even with like his worst films being just 1949, like 1949 is an incredibly competently made, like it's a well-made movie. It's like directed well. It's not written very well because it's not very funny, but it's directed very, very well. The same as Jaws is, same as Close Encounters, and then he followed up with E.T. and like you can see the evolution of Spielberg as a filmmaker from Jewel through Sugarland Express to like Empire of the Sun in 1987. Like you can see a man mastering his craft over and over and over and over and over. And then you get to something like Jurassic Park, and you see how he made Jurassic Park, and you're like, how did he make that? But then follows Jurassic Park with Schindler's List, a complete 180-degree turn from dinosaurs in Puerto Rico to the Holocaust and World War II and Nazi death camps and stuff like that. I mean, there is I don't think there is a director living that is equal to Steven Spielberg as a technical filmmaker, a man who lives and breathes filmmaking is Spielberg. I mean, if you watch Meet the Fablemans or The Fablemans, is it Meet the Fablemans or just The Fablemans? If you watch The Fablemans, it's a biographical film about essentially about Steven Spielberg's life from a child up until he becomes basically a filmmaker, being introduced to John Ford for the first time. It's a fantastic movie. But if you watch that, you will see that this person, this director, Steven Spielberg, is a man who lives and breathes filmmaking. Everything from Akira Kurosawa, John Ford, David Lean, all the way up to like even his contemporaries these days, like Brian De Palma. I know Brian De Palma is not essentially a contemporary, but like there is just something about how Steven Spielberg makes a movie that has a sort of warmth to it and really encapsulates the whole essence of cinema. Another really good filmmaker, not now but before, would be David Lean. David Lean's directing and just his epic scope of everything from Bridge on the River Kwai to Lawrence of Arabia to Out of Africa and stuff like that. Like these epic movies that just look stunning. Like he knows how to capture scenes in a movie. Like you look at the Lawrence of Arabia, how that film was shot. It's shot on, I think it's Super 70mm. But the framing of that movie, the cinematography, the acting, the directing, just all comes together, and it's not a shock that people regard David Lean as one of the greatest filmmakers that ever lived. Same with Akira Kurosawa. You look at Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, High and Low, Stray Dog. Like these movies are incredible. You look at the later stuff that Akira Kurosawa did, like Ran, and is it Dreams that he made? Akira Kurosawa's Dreams. I think it's that one. I might be wrong, but again, filmmakers that are influential to other filmmakers are generally tended to be like the masters of their craft. Like you can easily say Stanley Kubrick was a master of his craft. The way he shot a film is insane. Like 150 takes just to walk through a door. It just has to be perfect. And like David Fincher is also kind of the same, from stories that I've heard about Fincher or through YouTube videos of how he likes to get like 67 takes of a cup falling over or something, because it has to be that perfect shot. It has to be 100%. And the sad thing is that you've got filmmakers like David Fincher and Martin Scorsese not being able to make studio pictures anymore because of franchises being the king of everything. That they end up going to someone like Netflix or like Apple. Like Paul Greengrass did some cracking movies. He started with, well, I say he started with, but he's done some really good sort of true to life action drama movies, like what was it, Flight 93, I think he did, but also he did the second and third Born and the fourth Born, I think it was, and Green Zone. Like these really good action films that have a realism behind them, that you feel like you're there in that situation, especially like Green Zone with Matt Damon, which was set in Iraq, I think it was. But then you compare him to someone like Michael Bay, and I'm not going to have a pop at Michael Bay because there's Michael Bay movies I absolutely love, like Bad Boys 1 and 2, The Rock. I think Armageddon's fun. It's not a great movie, but it's fun. So Michael Bay he's a visual filmmaker. He's not a narrative filmmaker. But I'd say he was a master at what he does. So he is a master of explosions and action sequences and getting that adrenaline pumping and stuff like that. Spielberg is a master of all genres. If you look at his movie output, so you've got science fiction, you've got horror. So you've got Jaws, which is a horror movie. You've got science fiction, Close Encounters and E.T. You've got drama like The Color Purple. You've got comedy, Catch Me If You Can. Again, another film that is brilliantly made, brilliantly shot, wonderful music by John Williams, great performances from Tom Hanks, Christopher Walken, and Leonardo DiCaprio. But it's essentially a comedy. And it's probably his best comedy, actually. And then you see things like Jurassic Park and Schindler's List, or like I said, World War II movies like Schindler's List or Empire of the Sun, Saving Private Ryan. I know Spielberg probably hasn't had the greatest of successful runs in the last few years. I mean, he did kind of make a few movies that not many people really cared about, like Bridge of Spies and The Paper. Is it The Paper? I think it's The Paper. But people didn't really pay much attention to. And then Ready Player One, which was this big, huge studio science fiction extravaganza movie, which was not only like, yes, it was based on a novel, but it's essentially an original IP that just, it looks incredible. Like, it looks incredible, and it's a fairly intelligent film as well. So you've got that, and then you've got things like animation, where we were supposed to have two Tintin movies. We were supposed to have Tintin, the first Tintin, directed by Spielberg, and then the second Tintin movie was meant to be directed by Peter Jackson. But we only ever got Tintin, the first Tintin. Again, Spielberg never done animation before, but he's done this motion capture CGI animated movie that is high in adventure, high in fun, great music, great performances by all of them involved, and it's just a great fun movie. So I'd say Spielberg is probably a master of his craft, of all the crafts. I mean, even his written stuff, like The Fabelmans was written by him, Close Encounters of the Third Kind was written by him. He had a lot of script input on E.T., even though that was written by Melissa Matheson. And I think, a lot of people will say, oh, Martin Scorsese. And, like, I don't think Martin Scorsese is a bad filmmaker. I think he's a very, very good filmmaker. But I think he's held in too high a regard compared to someone like Steven Spielberg. If you look at the way that Martin Scorsese directs a movie and compare it to Quentin Tarantino, then I'd say those two were probably equal. Martin Scorsese is a better film director than Quentin Tarantino, but Tarantino does something that I don't see any other filmmaker doing, which is he writes and directs everything that he does. Like, all of his films are written and directed by him. Whereas Martin Scorsese he doesn't really write his stuff. He has input or co-write stuff with people, but generally his stuff is based on screenplays that are already written. So normally with Mitch Pileggi, with Steven Zalian, and these kind of writers. And I'm not shitting on Scorsese. I just think people hold him in too high a regard compared to his actual output. But then I haven't seen things. Well, I haven't seen every single Martin Scorsese film, so I can't say whether or not Silence is an incredibly gorgeous movie, or compared to Raging Bull. I can't like break that distinction. Another filmmaker that is probably a master of his craft and the way that he makes movies is someone like Terrence Malick. Started in the 70s with Badlands and Days of Heaven. Didn't make a movie then until The Thin Red Line, I think it was, which is this gorgeously shot, massive World War II, huge cast, extravagant, like dramatic movie. Fantastic film, Thin Red Line. Like I said, it's beautifully shot. He followed that up with, I think it's The New World with Colin Farrell, which was the sort of retelling of the tale of Pocahontas. But then I kind of don't really care about Terrence Malick's new films. So Tree of Life and what was the other one he did with Ben Affleck? Because he does this thing with the camera that sort of annoys the crap out of me. And yeah, I think it's like meant to be like the fluidity of the camera. But I'd say, for modern filmmakers, Steven Spielberg is probably the best director across the board, 100% across the board. But yeah, there are masters that are there. So yeah, thanks for the question, Palfy 18. Let's have a look. Nerdy Geezer. What's your question, Lee? Let's have a look, mate. I'll just move this over, make this a little bit bigger. Right, Nerdy Geezer, Lee, what have you sent me? What have you asked me, mate? Nerdy Geezer, what was your earliest memory of film? How old? What was it? Where? Etc. My earliest memory, like full memory, not a fragmented memory of such. It was like I can sort of remember, but my earliest, most vivid memory of film is watching Teen Wolf on VHS. There's bits of my brain that are just like, but you also watched Oliver and Company in the cinema. You watched the My Little Pony movie in the cinema. I was little. I have a sister. But those are memories that are kind of fragmented, and like I don't really have huge. I don't have like the full memory of that. But not Back to the Future, but the Teen Wolf. Teen Wolf was a film that I used to watch a lot as a child. I still love it to this day. And the reason this movie has such an impact in my memory of movies is not because of Teen Wolf itself, but because it was recorded off TV on VHS. But if you remember, most people will remember this, when you record a movie off TV on a blank VHS or on a VHS that has already had something recorded on it, there is a thrill of watching a movie to the end and then seeing what is left on the tape. And we used to have this VHS of Teen Wolf that we recorded off television, and I used to watch it all the time, like all the time. No, like we'd get home from primary school, get home from primary school, like when I was very, very small, and watch Teen Wolf. But there was also a film on the end of it called Volunteers, which starred John Candy and Tom Hanks. It's a comedy about a rich guy who ends up joining the Peace Corps and gets involved with like Burmese soldiers or something. It's not actually a very good film. But the reason it stands with me is because whenever Teen Wolf would end, we would have the last like 15-20 minutes of Volunteers on the arse end of the tape. So at the end of Volunteers, they blow up a bridge, like Bridge on the River Kwai. It's sort of like a reference to Bridge on the River Kwai. So I would watch that, and then there would be like some really shitty 80s adverts from ITV and stuff. But yeah, that's probably one of the earliest memories I've got of movies. How old? So I would have been about 5 or 6. What was it? Teen Wolf and Volunteers, and where? My front living room. I also have other memories as well. So I have memories of like really cool memories. I was a bit older at this point. But there was we have a family friend who sadly passed away a couple of years ago. His son is a big collector of movies and comic books and stuff, and he had Laserdisc back in the early 90s. He was one of the first people to pick up on the awesomeness of Laserdisc, and he would get the movies imported. So I remember going up to their house. It was me, my brother, my sister, my mum, and my dad, and we'd go up and we'd watch movies up there as a family and friends. And one summer we were invited up there because Matthew, who was the name of the son, had picked up 2 new movies on Laserdisc, films that hadn't actually been released in the UK, and they were True Lies and Speed. So we had a afternoon of watching True Lies, and then an evening of watching Speed, and on Laserdisc long before VHS releases, and I think might have been cinema releases. I can't remember here in the UK, but yeah. So that's a really good memory, and yeah, there we go, Lee. I hope that answers your question. Not as in depth as I wanted to go, but still, cheers. Thanks for the question, man. What else we got? At my AI boy or me a boy too. What movie genres do I enjoy watching more? Science fiction is my favorite genre, so I will watch sci-fi as much as possible. I'm also a huge fan of action movies. Like, my action movie knowledge is stupid. It's like it goes through like 1970s crime and action to like straight to DVD Scott Adkins movies now, and like films like the Undisputed movies directed by Isaac Florentine. Like, those movies are like action movie is a genre that people seem to think only started in the 1980s with First Blood and things like Commando and those type of movies. But action is literally, it's been around since the 50s, 60s, but it's not been action that people are used to. Well, are used to associating with the genre, being people like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. But if you look at a film like North by Northwest, the fantastic, probably my favorite Alfred Hitchcock movie, that is a relentlessly paced like action movie. When you really look at it, it's got stunt work in it, it's got like tense moments and like moments of action that this is really bad, but there's a really, really good video where Guillermo del Toro talks about North by Northwest being probably one of the best, purest action movies that have ever been made, and I completely agree with him. Another really, really good action movie that doesn't really get the same recognition in the genre as, say, some films that came later in the 80s is something like The Mechanic with, not Steve McQueen, with Charles Bronson, directed by Michael Winner. That is a fantastic action film. It's got Jean-Michael Vincent in it as well. So Charles Bronson and Jean-Michael Vincent was remade as The Mechanic with Jason Statham by Simon West. Then there was a second sequel to the Jason Statham one, which is not as good, but it's still a fun movie. Other good 70s action films that people don't really recognize as action. Dirty Harry. Dirty Harry is a great example of an action movie. I watched this last night. This is Blazing Magnums, or Shadows in an Empty Room. This was from 1976. has an insane car chase in that movie. Such a good car chase. The rest of the movie's a bit crap, but the car chase is incredibly good. Like, probably one of the best car chases I've ever seen. And I've seen a lot of car chases. French Connection. It's another action movie. Like, there are action films that aren't necessarily ones that people would think of when they think of the genre of action. Like I said, so those are probably... That's probably one of my favorite genres. Science fiction, like I said, sci-fi is my favorite genre, hands down. Most of my Blu-rays and DVDs tend to be science fiction, everything from the 1950s up until now. So I can easily sit there and watch a black and white film from 1952 about a man in a rubber costume chasing a woman through a forest that was made on a budget of about 45p and enjoy the fuck out of that. Or I can watch something like Alien Romulus, which is a $100 dollar movie set in a universe that has been established for the last 40 years. And while I didn't think it was as good as people made it out to be, it was still one of the better entries in that franchise, but it's still a sci-fi movie. But I love a lot of sci-fi stuff. What else is there? There's a lot of crap sci-fi as well, though. So, like Free Jack. Free Jack is a terrible movie, but again, it's fun. I went through a period of watching a lot of horror movies, like a lot of horror movies. At one point, horror was my favorite genre, but I kind of grew out of it. I know it's like a bit elitist to say that I grew out of a genre. It's not. It's more a case of, like, I saw the ones that I wanted to see. So, like the Friday the 13th movies, Nightmare on Elm Street movies, Halloween movies, Evil Dead. What else is there? Like one of my top 5 films of all time is a horror movie, which is Dawn of the Dead. But I did the whole exploitation, like the Italian horror thing. I've seen things like Cannibal Holocaust. I've seen things like Your Vice is a Locked Door and Only I Have the Key. I've seen these giallos and stuff, and they to be honest, they kind of didn't really do much for me. And like I find that nowadays horror movies aren't horror movies, they're supernatural films. So if a film comes out and it's said it's a horror film, but it's got a rating of either a PG or a PG-13 or a 12 in the UK or a 15, to me it's not a horror movie, it's a supernatural thriller or a supernatural drama or a film that has some form of supernatural elements. A horror film is something, for me, that presents the viewer with horrific imageries. I can't even speak. Horrific imagery. That could be gore or decapitation or something like that. And I'm not saying that in a twisted, fucked up, mind bend bullshit way. What I'm saying is that it's... I like my horror to be gory, but I like it to be gory to the point where it's ridiculous and over the top, which is why I think Braindead is a really good example of over the top gore that is done in a way that you can't take it serious. There are movies I think that kind of go a bit too far. Like I'm not really fussed on the Terrifier movies. I watched the first one and I watched half of the second one before I was just like, I can't really be arsed with this. And I don't care for the extreme side of horror cinema. I've done part of that. Well, I've done my delve into some of that. I watched some really fucked up movies. I haven't gone down the route of August Underground or the Vomit Gore trilogy stuff. I have no interest in that. And I think it was because I did all that. I watched a lot of extreme horror, especially the French horror new wave stuff like Frontiers and Martyrs and even something like a Serbian film and the fucking Human Centipede 2, which is one of the worst films I've ever seen. Because I watched all that, I kind of burnt myself out on horror, and every now and then I'll have like the urge to watch, I don't know, Evil Dead 2 or maybe one of the Friday the 13th or Halloween. I've got the 3 Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends movies. I've got them. But yeah, I kind of burnt myself out on horror, and the only horror I really watch now are horror movies that are essentially horror comedies, or ones that are things like the new Scream movies. They're ones I get most enjoyment from because they're ones you can just switch your brain off on. What else we got? Is going to the cinema a dying form of entertainment? From at Garlic Gorilla 6540. Is going to a cinema a dying form of entertainment? 100% yes. The reason is because films aren't shown at the cinema anymore. Only specific movies get the option of being put in a cinema. By that I mean Disney and Disney and franchises in general are the only the only film studios that can put a movie out in cinemas, because everything else, it costs far too much to promote and to put a film into a theater. If a film costs a very small amount, so if it's a low budget independent movie, that independent movie does not have a chance of being shown citywide or countrywide or internationally wide, due to the cost of being able to put that film into a cinema, which then drops the amount of films that are available for people to go and see, which is why things like Netflix and Disney Plus and Amazon Prime, when they make their own content. Take Electric State, for instance. The Electric State cost $320 million. It's made no money at all because people are calling it crap. So where does Netflix get that money from? Netflix gets it from people paying the subscription fee. So instead of like paying your however much money it costs to go to the cinema these days to see a film like Electric State, instead you pay $9.99 and you can watch Electric State. But if you get bored halfway through, you can probably end up watching, I don't know, something like Rush Hour, because it might be on Netflix. It's just not having the options there anymore. I remember when I was a kid, even a teenager, I used to go to the cinema once a month. No, not once a month, once a week. Because there was a new film out once a week, and they didn't take up 14 fucking screens of a cinema. In Cardiff, we've got 3 cinemas. We've got a Cineworld, a View, and there's one down the Odeon down the bay, I think it is, down Cardiff Bay. We had 4. We had a Premiere cinema as well, but that closed, and that was a great cinema because I used to go there and watch movies because they were £4. It was where I watched Mad Max Fury Road. Watched it in 3D. Didn't need to be watched in 3D, but I watched it in 3D, and yeah, it was a really good little cinema. It felt like an independent cinema, a little indie cinema. But yeah, I mean, it is a dying form of entertainment because, one, it's the cost. 2, if you really want to go and see a film, I think one of the biggest issues with filmmaking and new films is that if a film gets a digital and theatrical release on the same day, then 10 minutes into the release of a digital home release, it will be online for free because someone would have pirated it. So piracy is a big issue. I am personally I'm guilty of having done it a few times myself, but mainly for films that I can't find. But I think, so I think going to the cinema is a dying form of entertainment because we're not given enough options to see films. And the films that do get released outside of the big tentpole movies, like the Marvel movies or Star Wars or something like that, the movies that do get released are shit. Like fucking awful movies, or movies that like are co-financed by the cinema chain. I remember I went to a film quiz in the Premiere in Cardiff a couple of years ago, and there was a poster for Fisherman's Friend. Now, like, it might be a good film. It might be a good film. I've never seen it myself. But why is it that a film like Fisherman's Friend, which was probably made for about £10 million, can get a theatrical release when something like, I don't know, Electric State, which cost £320 million or $320 million, Netflix decides it must go on their streaming platform, which I guarantee that within a month it'll vanish. It'll still be on Netflix, but you'll have to physically search for it, which happens with a lot of Netflix movies. They get put in, the algorithm loses it. So yeah, I think cinema is a dying form of entertainment because we don't have enough options, and films stay in theaters for far too long, and it costs too much. Trev794 asked, once a genre has had its magnum opus, like Lord of the Rings for fantasy, how does a genre come back from that? Who's to say Lord of the Rings is fantasy's magnum opus? I don't think it is. I think that every genre can do something new, can do something better. I'm not a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. They are incredibly well-made movies. Do not get me wrong on that. I am not a fantasy person. I like maybe 3 or 4 fantasy movies, which are Dragon Slayer, Legend, Willow, and The Princess Bride. I think there's one more as well. Oh, and Krull. So yeah, I'm not a massive fantasy fan, but I can understand why people are so enamored with Lord of the Rings. They are these epic movies that look fantastic even now, but I don't think any genre has had its magnum opus, because everybody has different opinions of how a film is. Like, you could say that comic book movies magnum opus is The Dark Knight, but you've also got Avengers Endgame. So which one's the magnum opus? Is it The Dark Knight or is it Avengers Endgame? Because while The Dark Knight is fucking amazing, so is Avengers Endgame. Same with action movies. What is an action movie magnum opus? You've got movies that are probably the greatest action movies of all time, like Die Hard, Predator, The Rock, Con Air. These movies are huge action movies, but they each outdo each other, or they each match each other in how good they are in their respective genres. Like horror movies, you can't have a magnum opus horror movie. You're going to have classics and legendary movies, but there's always going to be someone that comes out with something so original that it's hard to top for a while. So like they tend to just influence as well. So Lord of the Rings is influential to modern fantasy movies and TV shows like Game of Thrones, and obviously the stuff that is sort of based on Lord of the Rings, and also games and stuff like video games. So Lord of the Rings has an influence, has a creative influence on modern fantasy. But Lord of the Rings is based on a book, or based on 3 books. And someone one day will come out with something so unbelievably vast in lore and originality that gets made into a movie that becomes this huge, massive, like new Lord of the Rings, and people will go fucking crazy for that because it's so good. Like, I remember when Lord of the Rings came out, I was bored by the movies. I mean, they're very well made, but I got bored by them. So I don't understand. Like, I don't understand the love of how much love they get. Same with the Harry Potter films. Like, I watched all is it 8 Harry Potter films? I watched all the Harry Potter films in the space of a week because I'd never seen all of them all the way through, and they were okay. I mean, the first 2 movies are wank, just like really bad CGI, bad acting, just bad scripts. As soon as the third one comes out and it gets a little bit darker, and then it gets gradually darker and more sinister as the series goes along, I think that's where Harry Potter is best, not in the kiddie movies. So yeah, so that's what I think. I don't think any genre has had its magnum opus, because every genre then also has films that are influential on future films. Like, you wouldn't have something like Schindler's List, not Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan, which is a really good war movie, without something like The Longest Day, or even something like Bridge on the River Kwai, or even Spielberg's own Empire of Tomorrow, Empire of the Sun. I couldn't remember the title of it then. Obviously, the main influence is the actual Second World War for that. But yeah, so every film in a specific genre will have these big, huge tentpole films that people refer to as classics and as the magnum opus, but in reality they're just more films that will influence future generations of filmmakers. How many more we got? Movie Palace of Blood, at Movie Palace of Blood, asked 2 questions. I'm going to read the first one. What was my experience in the video nasty era of finding and watching pre-certs? Or did you first watch many nasties, censored or uncut bootlegs? Your general thoughts on BBFC censorship, and did you buy those early Vipco releases on VHS or DVD which weren't even remastered? I wasn't really exposed to the video nasty era at the time, because I wasn't old enough. 1984, the Video Recordings Act in the UK came in, which was why we have BBFC certificates on all our movies now. Prior to the 1984 VRA, we had films that were classed as pre-certs. So they were films that were released that didn't have existing certificates on them, like 18, 15, 12, PG, and U. So I was never exposed to that. My my entry into the world of the video nasties came in the early 2000s, I guess, when films were getting more and more films were getting released from after being banned for so long. So like The Evil Dead, and which was in fact classed as a video nasty. Then like films like Clockwork Orange and The Exorcist, which weren't technically classed as video nasties but were banned movies. But my sort of segue into seeing video nasties for the first time didn't really happen until the 2009, 2010, which was due in most part to a forum called Cult Labs, which I mentioned in my live stream the other day. Cult Labs is a forum where a lot of people who enjoy cult movies and horror movies and stuff like that would go, and they would talk about certain films and like certain eras of movies. Excuse me. At the time, I knew of some films. I hadn't seen them though, and the Vipco DVDs were readily available from secondhand shops and stuff. There's where I used to live, there was a secondhand record store called the Vinyl Records, which was around the corner. It was like a 2-minute walk from my house. I used to buy a lot of my DVDs from there. So as soon as I turned 18, I got a job and I was able to afford to start buying physical media a little bit more general, a little bit more in a bit more bulk, I would say. So yeah, so a lot of the video nasties that I've seen, there's a lot that I haven't seen. A lot of the video nasties that I've seen came to me via like censored Vipco DVD releases that were out at the time and second hand. I didn't really like a lot of them. There are some that I think are absolute classics. There are some that I think are absolute trash. And there are some that I think are kind of misrepresented. For instance, Cannibal Holocaust. Yeah, it's a grim movie. It's a very grim movie, but I think people pay more attention to the fact that it was banned than the actual technical aspect of that movie and how it was far ahead of its time for when it was made. It was essentially a found footage movie before found footage films were even a thing. It's wonderfully well made to the point where the director, Ruggiero Deodato, was brought in front of court and was fined. I think he was fined or prosecuted for murder, but they threw the case out when he got the cast to show up in court alive and well. Another film that, like I said, doesn't really deserve being classed as a video nasty is the original Evil Dead. And you'll see like the majority of the video nasties that came out, or the films that were considered video nasties, are a lot of trashy, low budget, low rent, low quality Italian exploitation movies that do not deserve to be as lauded and fucking celebrated as much as they are. Like I said, there are some that are absolutely incredible, and I'm not even sure if they are classed as video nasties, but something like Suspiria, which like Dario Argento did such an incredible job with that film, that like taking influence from people like Mario Bava, and it just works so well. It's a gorgeously lit and photographed movie. It feels gothic, but it also feels sort of modern as well. And yeah, I think that's an incredible film. Like I said about Cannibal Holocaust, there are other cannibal movies that I think are just trash, like Cannibal Ferox, which is just a fucking awful movie. But then there are other cannibal films which I think are kind of lumped in with the video nasties, but aren't actually that bad. So Cannibal Apocalypse is a very good film. It's a very well done cannibal movie which stars John Saxon, and it was made by I can't even remember who made it now. But yeah, something like Cannibal Apocalypse, which isn't even that bad, it isn't even that violent or gory or anything, is lumped in with the video nasties. But yeah, so my experience with the whole video nasty era didn't really start until the late noughties, and I wasn't really there for pre-certs. I was born in 83. The VRA came out in 84. And but my general thoughts on BBFC censorship is they should fuck off. They should not have the right to tell me what I can and can't watch. The BBFC is sort of like, it's a pointless it's a pointless venture now, or whatever they call it, because of imports, and it has been since DVD. So the BBFC has cut certain films to allow it to get a release in the UK. So, for instance, a Serbian film was released on Blu-ray, massively cut at an 18 rating. Now, my first viewing of a Serbian film was the uncut international version of that. And I don't think, even though I owned the British Blu-ray release for many years, I don't think I ever watched it, because I still had a version of the international, the uncut international version on a bootleg type of thing. But I think the BBFC is kind of they're just outdated now, because if they're going to stop something from coming into this country, getting released in this country because of certain things, then I'll just go to Amazon and order it from a different country and get it. It's not like it's difficult to get hold of. Like, for instance, the Abyss not getting a release here in the UK on 4K because of some scene involving I think it was to do with animal cruelty, something to do with mice or rats or something. I can't remember now. But didn't get a release in the UK uncut because of a certain film, a certain scene that featured what was classed as animal cruelty, but I don't think there was any actual animal cruelty or any animal harm in the film. Again, horse falls. Like, the film has been cut because of horse falls. Like, these horses are trained to fall a specific way. Watch the making of Django Unchained, and they speak to a horse wrangler stunt coordinator who has trained these horses to fall in a way that they do not get hurt. That is exactly what these stunt performers have done in films in the past, which has prevented movies from getting released in the UK because they have certain sequences in it. I just think the BBFC is it's an outdated. It's just outdated now. Like, movies are easy to get hold of. I mean, if you want to watch a movie, you go online. You can find, if you get a VPN, you can watch an uncut version from another country, or you can import a Blu-ray or a 4K, which is going to be completely uncut. So it just makes the BBFC pointless. I mean, they do it for legal reasons, to have a film shown in the cinema, to give it an age rating. But again, it's still pointless, because if the film gets released in the cinema, but they've had to cut certain scenes out, you're not watching a full version of that film. So I think the BBFC is just outdated and pointless and unwarranted, and should fuck off. And Movie Palace of Blood also asked, how about the scarcity of a title on home video, such as The Keep or Fatal Games or Trick or Treat, can create hype for actually average or even below average films, and how collectors get caught up in these often overpriced, overpackaged editions that some of these films really don't warrant, and how all this warps people's perceptions of these films and expectations of those who haven't seen them. Inspired by me watching my quickly sold out limited of The Keep, first time rewatching it in 20 years, and it's really not a good film. But the hype for years of this not being out on Blu, etc., was so high, and the hype on release was so high. I've talked about this a lot in videos and stuff. In regards to The Keep, I own a bootleg widescreen laser disc transfer of a theatrical bootleg DVD of The Keep, which is edited which is an edited version. It's the complete film that was released in theaters, but in the current format that it is in, which I think is at just over 87 minutes or something like that. I can't. It's been a long time since I watched The Keep. I didn't think The Keep was good. In fact, I thought it was awful. I thought it was a mess. I thought the VFX were crap. I thought that some of the performances weren't very good. I thought Scott Glenn was massively miscast. And I can understand why Michael Mann has disowned it. And the reason people went fucking mental over The Keep being released on Blu-ray is because it hasn't been available since 1983. And I think that's the reason why people are going crazy for it. Yes, it's not a good film. It's really not a good film. And they do it with everything. Every film that comes out that has maybe not been on a physical format since VHS, people go absolutely apeshit for. So you also pointed out Trick or Treat. Now, Trick or Treat, I personally enjoy Trick or Treat. I think it's a really silly film. It's a heavy metal horror movie from the late 80s. I have a German Blu-ray for it under the title of Ragman, I think it is, with Trick or Treat at the bottom. I'm glad it's got a decent package or decent release because it is a fun movie. However, I will be sticking with my German Blu-ray for the time being because I do not wish to spend over a large amount of money on something that is overpriced anyway for what it is. My biggest issue with people doing this is the trauma movies that got released by Arrow in the UK. Things like Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High that were being sold at a premium price of £20, which I think is about £19.99 more than the actual budget of a trauma movie. So paying a premium price for a low budget piece of crap movie like Class of Nukem High is fucking mental to me. I do not understand. I have a Prism Leisure DVD of the Toxic Avenger, which I paid $3.99 for secondhand. Was it $3.99? Might even been 50p, and I still think I was ripped off. Like I've done movies that I've done videos that have been about me wanting to see certain films on 4K or on Blu-ray. But these are films that I loved from watching as a kid, like Wildcats and the Explorers and The Boy Who Could Fly, etc., etc. But obscure shit movies that were shit when they came out are still going to be shit now. For some reason, give people a hard on, and they feel that they need to pay an excess premium price for a overpackaged, overpriced, and just low quality production. I just don't get it. It makes no sense to me. And people who are paying these prices, who then go on to YouTube and make videos about how they'd never seen the film before and they thought, oh, it'll be a good print and stuff. Just fuck the print. Fuck the print. Fuck the audio. Fuck the special features. What you want to think about is the film any fucking good? If the film isn't any good, why are you spending the money on this? Or do your fucking research beforehand. Watch a trailer, read about the film, read reviews. If out of 10 reviews for one film, 9 of them are yeah, it's crap, I would probably go with the 9 and not the 1, because everyone's gonna have different opinions on different movies. But you need to make sure that before you spend $70 on a Vinegar Syndrome limited edition of fucking, I don't know, some exploitation shit from 1982 that got released in 3 theaters because it was produced by a guy who had, I don't know, fucking investment in 3 theaters. There's a reason why these movies haven't been available. It's because they're usually generally crap. Whereas the good films aren't available because studios are being greedy. So yeah, I don't know if that kind of helps, that kind of says what I'm talking about. Have I missed any more questions? No, that's all the questions. There we go. That is my Q&A. This was actually quite fun to do. I know I probably rambled on a little bit, but thank you everyone for the questions. Thanks everyone for watching. I know this is quite long. I'm going to edit these together, and thanks everyone for watching. As usual, my name is Pedro. This is Pedro's Movie Cavern. I'm going to give you a salute. I'm going to throw up the peace sign, and I'm going to tell you that I am out. Thanks everyone.